Chancellor Laji traversed an unusually lonely pathway of the normally bustling activity of the League's diplomatic headquarters. With a saddened hiss, Laji reminded himself of the reason why it was so lonely, and why it was to be demolished as soon as the occupant at the end of the hallway left the planet. The only two other sapients he saw were two lightly armed humans standing guard outside the room. The two humans stepped aside, granting him immediate access. Laji's membrane flashed with white and green spots. Surprise. He had come expecting to pull his rank or try to convince the guards to let him in. A moment later, he composed himself and walked inside the soon-to-be-demolished United Systems Embassy. "Is it worth it, Aaron?" Laji asked, his membrane turning to a soft pink to show his sadness. "What is worth it, Laji?" Aaron retorted as he stared at a painting depicting a star system. Laji glanced around the room. He'd visited the human embassy a few times since their integration, but he never placed it too much attention. Why would he? Every embassy had the same commodities, bearing minor tweaks such as slightly higher or lower temperatures and humidity. The size of the room could also be different if the species in question, like the hulking brack, exceeded 3 meters of stature. But aside from that, every embassy was the same. The Vuvkut Chancellor noticed, with grim sadness, that everything but the desk and a few choice decorations, such as the painting Aaron was staring at, was missing. "Please, Aaron, this will be the last time we'll see each other. At least grant me a conversation without you dancing around the initial subject," Laji said, standing at the other side of the immaculate desk. "I suppose I owe you that much, Laji." Aaron smiled to himself. "To answer your question, yes. Yes, it is. The sanctions, the penalties, everything your species has achieved in these long 30 years after contacting the League, now gone. All because you'd rather stand by your skewed beliefs?" Laji questioned as his membrane flashed with varying degrees of pink. "The sanctions mean nothing. We'll recover the money lost one way or another over time. The penalties, on the other hand, being cut off from the galactic net and pay for all abroad humans traveling through League territory to be returned to United Systems space, that was a blow that, whilst ready to take, hurt quite badly," Aaron chuckled. "And you find this amusing?" Laji questioned, confused. "In a sense," Aaron began. "Compared to standing up for our beliefs, those losses mean absolutely nothing. Though I heard that most of the other League members are having some trouble as well," Laji hissed. "I didn't want to believe the reports saying that smuggling groups trafficking human music and literature sprung up days after the announcement was made," he confessed. "The Belsimons, however, have entered into a standard League year-long spiritual pilgrimage across their empire." Aaron blinked, sparing a momentary glance at Laji before returning his gaze to the painting. "Really? I didn't know that. Can I know why?" he asked, intrigued. Apparently they were absolutely enamored with human cuisine. Something about how you make it just clicked with their palates, Laji explained. He was then confused when he saw Aaron smiling widely. "Why are you smiling, Aaron?" "It seems that the Belsimons share that trait with the Quawos and the Fergis. Despite not eating meat, they devour vegan dishes as if their lives depended on it," Aaron chuckled. "I am going to ignore you comparing them to your friends," Laji lamented. "Humanity will regret leaving the League, Aaron." "Is that a threat?" Aaron asked, his smile never failing. "Of course not. But cut off from the galactic market and the net, I cannot begin to imagine how your economy will function effectively." Laji clicked and chirped to indicate his apparent grief. "How many humans are going to starve? How many lost their jobs? I'm sure there will be protests and riots across your territory despite taking precautions, Aaron. A few here and there. No one will starve, fortunately, since now we can direct the entire harvest production of Dawn into our space. And even without Dawn, Sunset and Orichalcum already produce more than enough to feed 40 billion hungry human mouths 4 times over," Aaron explained. "And before you touch mineral issues, the Koshi already covered that front." Aaron looked at Laji with a smirk. "And it's not as if the League controls the entire Milky Way, right? We have more than enough systems and space to claim, since the League will never approach the systems controlled by the ones you deem to be monsters." "On that aspect, you are absolutely correct, Aaron," Laji agreed. "The neutral zones existed for that sole reason, after all." "But what about your private corporations? access to the most advanced fields of study and research the League has to offer, the privileges to emergency stockpile resources in case of a disaster. We'll manage. We humans have a pretty long track record of coming up with solutions to tough situations. Aaron turned back to gaze at the painting. How about war? Is the League enraged about humanity leaving its warm embrace enough to declare war? Only uncivilized, despotic, savage barbarians would resort to violence and war to solve a problem, or just to prove a point, Laji replied, his membrane flashing a mix of gray, black, and aquamarine, regret, anger, and shame. Your species may be spacefaring now, but you were young when the before was still raging, Laji went on. War is an ugly thing. Blockades, starvation, slavery, forced labor, unethical experimentation, mass murdering. The list of horrors goes on and on and on and on. Quite, Aaron agreed. That's the most beautiful thing about the League, in my opinion. Your abhorrence of war. How your founding leaders came together, sick, tired, and revolted by the conflict that the original 20 vowed to ban and outlaw war for as long as the League stood. Aaron smiled. And even if the League were to crumble, which, at least to me, seems impossible, all of the species in the League value peace and stability more than anything. So why throw us aside for the sake of those creatures you call friends, Aaron? Are we not friends, too? Laji asked, his membrane showing how honest he was in that regard. You may have been infuriating and exasperating on many occasions, but I always considered you a friend. I don't understand why humanity has decided to stand next to those unnatural creatures. The universal laws of life seem quite correct, don't they? Aaron replied, a hint of sadness tinging his voice. All sapient life is individual. All life is organic and carbon-based. All life evolves on planets ranging from arid to humid to slightly below water, freezing biospheres. All life is independent. All life rejects the consumption of other living beings, he said. Each and every single member species fit those laws entirely. Even us fill it to near completion, except that we do consume the flesh of others living beings, he chuckled. I still remember the pain that was explaining the term cattle to the rest of the League. Laji remained silent, opting to let Aaron continue with whatever he was talking about. From your perspective, it is no wonder why you would shun, find repugnant, fear, and dare I say hate our friends, Aaron said in an empty, vacant tone. When I first started to research onto why the League would turn the Koshi away, yet embrace us wholeheartedly, I thought it was due to their appearance. But after I studied the laws and what they implied, I understood. Aaron smiled somberly. They are different. On a fundamental level, they are so different it is scary to think about just how they can be alive, how they can exist and came to be, let alone achieve sapience. He chuckled. The universe always has a curveball ready to throw at us, doesn't it? Aaron, if you understand how their existence is a mistake. Laji jumped back in fright the moment Aaron slammed a fist on the desk, his teeth bared ferociously. They are not a mistake, Aaron said loudly, somehow managing to refrain himself from shouting, but his anger could easily be seen reflected on his face. They may be different, but as we got to know them better, we found what amazing, wonderful people they are. And we learned, despite our differences, there was no need to fear them. Our differences made us stronger. It made us us. It took a few seconds of ragged breathing before Aaron continued. And we understood. We understood we were right in our belief. All life is sacred. Aaron walked towards the painting, his eyes reflecting the deepest regret Laji had ever seen in any sapient to date. We learned that lesson in the worst possible way, Laji, Aaron whispered, stopping scant feet away from the painting. Once I'm gone, by order of the Council of Nations, a data package will be delivered to the Chamber of Chancellors. It'll contain the single piece of history we kept a secret from the League all these years. He turned his head to Laji. Do you know what system is this? Laji walked next to Aaron, all fear forgotten in the presence of the sorrow reflected in his eyes. Laji inspected the painting and found, to his surprise now that he saw it up close, that it was not only beautiful but also astonishingly profound. Was this hand-drawn? Finding his voice again, he asked. Aaron nodded. This system, I don't recognize it. What do you call it? Alpha Centauri, a trinary star system. Aaron's lips were graced with a small smile. It was also the first system in which humanity set foot on after Sol. He lost his smile. We arrived here at an M-class star we call Proxima Centauri. The first expeditionary task force was comprised of a fully multi-purposed Oberon-class exploration heavy destroyer and an escort of 5 frigates and 2 corvettes. It was all just to put a big show for the people back on Earth and the colonies in Sol, of course, but also just in case something went wrong. "How is this relevant to the data package?" Laji asked. Sure, first FTL test drives and explorations could be ugly, and accidents were, while not common, certainly not a rarity either. Was the entire task force lost, as did they try to splinter away from your government at the time? Neither. You see, while Proxima Centauri was uninhabited and we settled down a base of operations on Proxima Centauri B, later renamed as Lanus for the duration of the mission, you see, humanity had suspected Lanus was barely habitable, and it was. Still, it was a monumental achievement for humanity. The first-generation FTL hyperdrive worked as intended. A trip of decades was shortened to a mere 2 weeks. It meant we were no longer bound to our solar system. Then what went wrong? Laji asked, unable to comprehend why the painting invoked such an emotional response from the human he considered a friend. So far, this sounds like a successful first FTL jump. Because it was. Everything was going according to plan, Aaron said. But something unexpected happened. According to the reports, 49 days into the mission, they noticed something strange happening in the Alpha Centauri beta system. Now that humanity was so close for the first time, they noticed a moon orbiting Alpha Centauri Beta 3, a Jupiter-like gas giant. They also noticed it was not only habitable, but inhabited by a species called Sishi. Aaron closed his eyes. Turns out our civilizations achieved spaceflight around the same time, the main difference being that we achieved FTL while they had yet to do so. Sishi? I don't recall ever hearing about them before, Laji said, confused, intrigued, and curious at the same time. The leader of the mission, Commander Nico Vargas, decided to attempt the first contact event in human history. But before that, they spied on all the Sishi broadcasting signals they could pick up. They picked apart their language, broadcasting methods, whatever they could learn from their culture and history, essentially everything they could learn about them, they studied. Aaron opened his eyes, a hand placed on the glass, protecting the valuable painting. One of the frigates returned to Earth to give the good news, and the permission was handed out immediately. When first contact was established 2 months later, clumsy as it was, it all seemed to go as planned. Despite their best efforts at the time, only small pieces and snippets of their language had been deciphered, enough to allow a basic level of communication. Then, the cultural and information exchange happened. Almost as soon as the Sishi learned the existence of Earth, they turned on Commander Nico Vargas and his crew. They slaughtered everyone in boarding actions launched on the other ships. They took out every ship except for a single corvette, the Augustus, that managed to beat their boarding party and run back to Earth. Laji remained silent, his eyes refusing to blink lest he'd miss one of his facial expressions. Before humanity formed the United Systems, Laji, we were working under what we called the Federated Nations, a much-needed improvement over the lessons learned from the failed United Nations it replaced. Soon after the Augustus arrived back on Sol, we also received notice that the base of operations on Lanus had been overrun. The message detailed that if nothing was done, it was estimated that the Sishi would manage to reverse engineer or even duplicate our hyperdrives and outfit their, by the time, monstrous fleet in just 4 years. In terms of firepower, we were superior, but their ships outnumbered ours by nearly 20-1, so a decision was made. Aaron turned to face Laji. Faced with the imminent invasion by a hostile race, the trigger was pulled. In under 6 months, every available warship was equipped with the best armament there was. They made the jump to Alpha Centauri in unison. Whilst numbering a measly 40 ships, our weaponry was superior, and this time we weren't going to invite them or give them a chance to get close. Aaron stopped for a moment, gulping a few times as he gathered the courage to continue. We didn't take a single casualty, but we destroyed every ship they had, starting with our captured vessels. We destroyed their in-system bases and stations. We destroyed most of their satellites, and when we sent them the message to surrender, they refused. Death before starvation, was their reply. Aaron stopped again, his eyes moistening. We were fools, Laji. We were fueled by fear and bloodlust for revenge. We were ignorant. Rather than lose millions of lives in an invasion, we bombarded their homeworld with nuclear fire. You... What? Laji asked, all color leaving his membrane to now be translucid. We exterminated an entire species, Laji. They declared war to us after we stretched our hands in friendship and trust. We were betrayed. We were irrational. By the time we discovered why they did what they did, it was far too late to do anything about it. Aaron turned to the painting again. In the data package the Council is going to receive, there is a special recording. I've heard it countless times. So have every important official after the United Systems were formed. From the representatives of the Council of Nations, to their rulers, to generals, admirals, commanders, captains, diplomats, Aaron explained. It contains the cries, wailing, screams, and hatred-filled words and curses of those that found the truth. Some even committed suicide on the spot. Laji had no words to say. To think that Aaron, a friend, colleague, and up to a few day cycles ago was a fellow chancellor, belonged to a species that had exterminated another species so coldly and casually. It made him sick to his stomachs. Even so, he desired to hear the rest of his people's dark history. They were dying and starving. Their homeworld, Friel, couldn't sustain them anymore. It had gone through a series of climate changes for the past 200 years. The reason they even achieved spaceflight was born out of desperation to save their people. When they learned about Earth, it was like a miracle had just arrived in their hands. They didn't take any chances and attacked. So great was their desperation, Laji. Aaron gritted his teeth and clenched his fists until his nails dug into his skin and crimson blood fell to the floor. And we didn't do anything to help them, to understand them. And now, the Sulcishis are no more, thanks to us. The ex-chancellor smiled. You don't have to say anything, Laji. I understand. Who knows? Maybe this is for the best. Wait, Laji spoke, surprising Aaron. Why didn't you kill the Fergis? They invaded your homeworld, did they not? It happened 50 years after we exterminated the Sulcishi. A lot had changed since then, including the formation of the United Systems and meeting the Koshi. In fact, it was our meeting them that finally cemented our belief to value all life, and that all life is sacred. As for the Fergis, we prepared to defend our home planet. Their ships slipped through our scanners until they were orbiting Earth. We were not going to fire first, but we were ready to fight if necessary, he chuckled. Thankfully, I was the recruit at the time in charge of the FTL broadcasting system. I sent a message to the Koshi asking for aid. They arrived within a few days before the Fergis settled down completely. And the rest, as they say, is history, Aaron explained. Suddenly a series of knocks were heard coming from the doors. Ambassador Aaron, it is time, one of the guards outside called loudly. It seems it's time for me to go, he said in a relaxed tone. Nodding to Laji, Aaron walked over to the doors. If you want the painting, you can have it, Laji. Consider it a gift. Have you told them? Laji asked as he watched Aaron open one of the doors. They know, all of them, and they accepted us regardless of our mistake, Aaron replied. Do you believe the League would have accepted us had they known the truth? Aaron let out a mirthless chuckle. Peace be with you, your kind, your friends, and the League, Laji. Laji didn't hear the door close. He didn't have to hear it to know Aaron and his guards were leaving. His eyes slowly turned to the painting. Suddenly, he understood the meaning behind it. No, he whispered in the empty room.